What if the last thing Queen Elizabeth ever uttered in this world wasn't a goodbye, but a command? A haunting deathbed wish, kept under royal lock and key, has just been unveiled by King Charles, and it's not about Camilla, Anne, or William. It's about Catherine. And now, the once united royal inner circle is teetering on the edge of total collapse. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. It began quietly, no grand announcement, no press conference, just a hushed gathering behind palace doors where a visibly strained King Charles held a sealed letter in his trembling hands. It was Queen Elizabeth's final message, entrusted to him alone, meant to be revealed only after her passing. The atmosphere shifted instantly. For those in the room, Camilla, Anne, William, the gravity of what was about to be disclosed could be felt in the air, thick with tension. When Charles broke the seal and read aloud his mother's final wish, a stunned silence filled the chamber. Elizabeth had not asked for remembrance or tribute. Instead, she had issued a directive. Catherine must be elevated to a position of exceptional royal authority. No one moved, no one spoke. The Queen's final words had detonated a silent bomb beneath the foundations of the monarchy. Charles's voice reportedly cracked as he read through the details, a desire for Catherine to be more than just a consort, more than a figurehead. Elizabeth's vision was clear. Catherine was to become the central axis around which the future of the monarchy would turn. Camilla's eyes, once glazed with assumed security, narrowed in disbelief. Anne, fierce and proud, reportedly crossed her arms in open defiance. William glanced at his wife with a quiet intensity that betrayed the storm of emotions raging behind his otherwise composed expression. The room was no longer a council, it was a battlefield, where loyalty, ambition, and legacy would collide. There was no room for misunderstanding. The Queen had named Catherine not out of sentimentality, but conviction. Elizabeth, whose reign had spanned eras and upheavals, saw something in Catherine that demanded preservation. A quiet force, a woman unshaken by public scrutiny, unwavering in her devotion, and unyielding in her silence. Yet the decision felt like a betrayal to some. To Camilla, it meant being outshined once again by a shadow from the past. To Anne, it was a distortion of hierarchy, an emotional decision cloaked as a strategic one. And to the inner circle, it was a power shift that came without warning, without consent. As word began to ripple through the royal corridors, unease followed. Some aides whispered of the Queen's clarity in her final days, while others cast doubts, wondering if the letter was planted or rewritten. Tensions escalated in private briefings. Shifting glances replaced polite smiles. The symmetry of royal life, once preserved by protocol, began to warp. Elizabeth's final wish had not united her heirs, it had divided them. And while the outside world continued to see a composed facade, inside the palace, every mirror reflected suspicion. This wasn't just a matter of succession or legacy, it was a fracture of identity within the institution. For the first time in decades, the monarchy itself felt uncertain, not because of scandal or rebellion, but because of a dying queen's final request. Whispers turned into warnings. Allies turned cautious. And at the center of it all stood Catherine, silent, poised and unknowingly, the cause of a royal reckoning. But what exactly did Elizabeth see in Catherine that none of the others did, and why did she keep it secret until her final breath, behind thick velvet curtains and centuries of portraits? King Charles summoned only 3 people into the Windsor Blue Room. What he revealed changed everything: a folded parchment bearing the Queen's seal, and a directive that sent Camilla into stunned silence and Anne into a fury. There are moments in royal history when the quiet becomes deafening, when a single gesture, a single slip of parchment, can unravel years of tradition and send shockwaves through the very walls of the monarchy. This was one of those moments. In the stillness of Windsor Castle, with only a ticking clock as witness, Charles opened the Queen's final letter. The words were simple, deliberate, unmistakable. Elizabeth had left instructions to be followed upon her death, and they were not ceremonial, they were revolutionary. As his voice filled the ornate room, Charles read the directive aloud. Catherine was to be recognized not merely as a consort or support figure, but as a central pillar of the monarchy's future. She was to assume a level of influence not seen since the days of Queen Mary. And with that, the fabric of the royal order began to tear. Camilla's reaction was instant and visceral. Her expression shifted from curiosity to disbelief, then to a cold, barely contained anger. Her fists, once resting elegantly in her lap, reportedly clenched. The words from Elizabeth's letter stung in ways Charles perhaps hadn't anticipated. For Camilla, this was more than a political move. It was a public erasure. Years of patience, endurance, and silent navigation through scandal now seemed insignificant in the shadow of Catherine's newly sanctioned authority. And beside her, Princess Anne erupted not with visible fury, but with piercing questions. She demanded clarity. Where was the original document? When had it been written? Who else had seen it? Her voice, sharp and unwavering, echoed with a defiance that only Anne could wield. She wasn't just protecting royal order. She was defending her mother's legacy and what she believed it truly meant. Charles, flanked by aides who looked just as unsure as he did, struggled to maintain composure. He reiterated the Queen's wishes, but Anne pushed back, accusing him perhaps not overtly but unmistakably of misinterpreting or even misusing their mother's final words. In the corner of the room, William stood silently beside Catherine. His presence was powerful not because of what he said, but because of what he didn't. No one could read his expression, but all eyes turned to him regardless. When his hand gently reached for Catherine's, it was as if centuries of hierarchy shifted ever so slightly. That simple gesture was not missed by Camilla, nor by Anne. It was not approval, it was allegiance. And in that room, a dangerous truth emerged. The Queen's final message had not been discussed, debated, or diluted. It was now real. It had surfaced at a time when alliances were fragile and egos were raw. The revelation wasn't just a crown passed down, it was a decision that disrupted balance, ignited suspicion, and shattered long-standing expectations. The silence that followed Charles's announcement wasn't one of agreement. It was the quiet before a storm. Yet it wasn't just what the letter said, it was the timing of Charles's decision to finally reveal it that raised the most eyebrows. While the palace trembles with murmurs and murmurs erupt into arguments, Catherine remains composed, but her silence hides something deeper. As royal aides begin shifting duties behind closed doors, the Duchess of Cambridge transforms from symbolic figurehead to strategic powerhouse. The revelation of Queen Elizabeth's deathbed wish sent shockwaves through every marble hall, but while others reacted with fury, denial, or silence, Catherine moved with quiet certainty. She didn't seek a podium. She didn't raise her voice. But behind her calm demeanor, something was changing. This wasn't a passive acceptance of royal fate. This was the beginning of a deliberate transformation. Inside the palace, where hierarchy is sacred and visibility is currency, Catherine's presence began to cast a longer and more commanding shadow. Not overnight, not with spectacle, but with small surgical shifts that spoke volumes. Meetings that were once attended solely by Charles's aides now included Catherine. Invitations to ceremonial planning sessions began arriving at her office first, and one by one, royal advisors started bypassing the old channels, reporting directly to her. Some whispered it was by design, Charles honoring the letter, quietly enacting his mother's vision. Others insisted it was Catherine's own doing, a woman no longer willing to wait in the wings while others plotted around her. Either way, the result was undeniable. Power was consolidating, and it wasn't gravitating toward Camilla or Anne, it was orbiting Catherine. Royal staff, often wary of siding with shifting tides, began referring to her in hushed tones as the Queen's chosen. It was more than a nickname. It was a signal. A cue that the balance of power had already tilted, even if the public hadn't yet seen it. But not everyone was willing to watch silently. Camilla, already rattled by Elizabeth's final decree, now found herself sidelined in real time. Her public appearances became colder, more restrained. Smiles faded quicker. There were talks unconfirmed, but persistent, that she had confronted Charles in private, questioning Catherine's growing influence and the palace's sudden realignment. But Charles, increasingly distant, seemed unmoved. To him, the course had already been set. And he wasn't steering the ship, he was merely honoring the compass his mother had left behind. Meanwhile, the most unexpected signal of shifting allegiances came from within the younger generation. Lady Louise and Sophie, once thought to be neutral players in the family dynamics, began appearing beside Catherine in key engagements. Their positioning wasn't coincidental. In a monarchy where optics matter more than words, their silent unity spoke volumes, a symbolic front, a quiet allegiance forming beneath the noise. It was as though the institution itself had begun choosing sides without ever declaring so outright. Still, through it all, Catherine never wavered. Her words remained rare, her posture unchanged, but those closest to her knew this was not passivity, this was strategy. Her grace was her weapon, her silence was her signal. And as her influence tightened like silk around the throne, one question echoed through the corridors of the monarchy. How long could the others stay quiet? But as Catherine's power quietly surges, resentment brews like a storm, and one figure refuses to stay silent any longer. She was crowned queen consort, promised dignity and status, but now Camilla feels cast aside, her years beside Charles reduced to a footnote by a dead monarch's final wish. And in a rare show of fury, Camilla delivers an ultimatum that leaves the palace stunned and divided. For years, Camilla had walked the tightrope of public skepticism and private restraint, slowly earning her place in the royal narrative. But the revelation of Queen Elizabeth's final wish and the rapid elevation of Catherine's role crushed what little security Camilla had built. The throne she once approached with measured confidence now felt distant, its weight slipping from her grasp with every whisper about the Queen's chosen. And behind the golden doors of Clarence House, she could no longer contain the storm brewing inside. This was not the Queen's place to decide, she allegedly snapped during a closed-door confrontation with Charles. Her voice, usually tempered by protocol, cracked with betrayal. Camilla wasn't just questioning Elizabeth's decision, she was challenging its very legitimacy. Her frustration wasn't rooted in envy alone. It was layered with years of veiled rejection, private tension, and memories of a queen who, though cordial in public, never fully welcomed her into the heart of the firm. Old wounds reopened with startling force. In her eyes, this final act by Elizabeth wasn't about Catherine's strengths, it was about Camilla's exclusion, a final judgment from beyond the grave. And with that, the silence was broken. Camilla demanded boundaries clear, public, and immediate. Catherine, she argued, was stepping into spaces she had no claim to. Her influence was unchecked, her reach expanding beyond what the title of princess should allow. For Charles, it was a moment of impossible choice. The duty to fulfill his mother's dying request, or the loyalty to protect the woman who had stood beside him through scandal, exile, and redemption. Palace aides watched in horror as the atmosphere grew tense. Long-time courtiers found themselves in the crosshairs, forced to choose between two queens. Some remained loyal to Camilla, citing tradition and hierarchy. Others quietly shifted allegiance to Catherine, moved by Elizabeth's words and the growing sense that the future belonged elsewhere. And then came the leaks. What began as hushed palace murmurs exploded onto tabloid front pages. Queen Camilla in crisis, screamed headlines. Windsor women at war, speculated another. The media, long starved for drama beneath the royal veneer, fed hungrily on every rumor, every supposed whisper from within the palace walls. Public opinion swayed wildly. Some sympathized with Camilla's anger. Others saw her as clinging to a crown that was never truly hers. Inside the palace, divisions sharpened, loyalty became a political weapon. Catherine remained silent throughout, refusing to rise to the provocation. But her silence only deepened the perception of calm power, while Camilla's outburst began to look increasingly desperate. And Charles, aging and exhausted, stood in the middle of a royal storm unlike anything he had foreseen. The monarchy he inherited was already reshaping itself, and it was slipping from his control. His choice would define not just the women around him, but the very legacy he would leave behind. Yet Camilla isn't the only one questioning the Queen's final decree. Princess Anne steps forward with a revelation of her own. In a bombshell intervention, Princess Anne delivers a counter-narrative that shakes the foundations of Charles's claim. According to her, Elizabeth's final wish wasn't written at all, it was whispered. And what she whispered wasn't about Catherine. Anne had long been the monarchy's quiet enforcer, the no-nonsense royal who chose duty over headlines, consistency over chaos. But now, the Princess Royal was stepping into the eye of the storm with something no one expected, a direct challenge to her brother, the king. Days after Camilla's outburst, Anne arranged a private audience with senior advisors, and what she shared sent tremors through the palace. With remarkable composure, she revealed that she had been by their mother's bedside during her final lucid hours, no aides, no cameras, just mother and daughter, in the stillness of dusk. And what Elizabeth reportedly said then, Anne insisted, contradicted everything Charles had declared. According to Anne, the Queen expressed unease, not confidence, about placing too much symbolic power in the hands of a single figure, no matter how beloved. She feared that centralizing influence under Catherine could fracture the royal dynamic and incite resentment. Her final words, Anne claimed, were a plea for Bar. Lance, not elevation. The implications were volcanic. If Anne's account was true, then Charles had either misunderstood their mother's intentions or chosen to rewrite them. And in either case, the legitimacy of Catherine's rapid rise was suddenly on unstable ground. The House of Windsor, once built on unspoken consensus, now found itself split in two. Anne, holding firm to the legacy of a balanced monarchy, cast herself as a guardian of the past. Charles and William, propelled by a vision of modernization and unity through Catherine, became the architects of a different future. Thus, a new schism quietly emerged, whispered first in private circles before echoing in corridors of power, the protectors of the past versus the heirs of the future. In a move that stunned even her closest allies, Anne began appearing alongside Camilla at carefully selected engagements. The message was subtle but unmistakable. Two women, both sidelined, both spurred by legacy, were now walking in tandem. It was a calculated alignment, one that sent a signal to insiders and loyalists alike. These weren't just two royal women holding hands in public. This was a statement of solidarity, a declaration that not all within the firm supported the Catherine pivot, and it didn't take long for the public to sense something was off. At formal events, the choreography of the royals began to falter. Where once there was warmth and rhythm, there now was hesitation. Catherine's smiles met with cool nods, Anne's posture rigid, Camilla's glances sharp and fleeting. For a family trained to perform unity, their discomfort had become impossible to conceal. Yet, even as tensions boiled, Anne remained composed, never speaking directly to the press. But behind closed doors, she was gathering support senior courtiers, former advisors to the late Queen, and even distant cousins, long estranged from royal decision-making. Her stance was clear. No matter how revered Catherine may be, Elizabeth's monarchy was built on restraint and shared duty, not singular dominance. And if Anne had anything to say about it, that would not be rewritten now. But amidst the storm of rival claims, one relic may hold the truth, and it's hidden in the Queen's private archive, far from curious eyes. Beneath the stone walls of Balmoral lies a vault only a handful have ever entered. It is here, among diaries, letters and relics, that a forgotten document re-emerges, one that may confirm or contradict everything Charles claimed, and bring the battle to a fever pitch. In the midst of swirling accusations, bitter alliances, and rising uncertainty, the path to clarity did not come through another statement or confrontation. It came through a silent journey to the north. Catherine, flanked only by the royal archivist and a discreet security team, travelled to Balmoral Castle under the guise of a private retreat. But those within the firm knew better. Balmoral wasn't just a royal retreat, it was a fortress of memory. And somewhere in its shadowed halls lay the vault where Queen Elizabeth kept her most personal documents, hidden from the world, protected from politics. When the heavy trunk was finally unlocked, a single envelope rested at the centre. It was unassuming in appearance, but its label carried Gravity Private E2R. A seal that meant no one but the monarch. And now, perhaps, her chosen was ever meant to see it. Inside was not a letter, but a draft. a working reformation of royal protocol, a vision, not a command, but a declaration of intent. And within its fragile pages, Elizabeth's unmistakable handwriting offered something no whispered memory could rival evidence. Her words were sharp, yet deeply emotional. She spoke not just of bloodlines and tradition, but of resilience, dignity, and transformation. She called Catherine a stabilizing force in an unstable age, and wrote of her belief that the future of the monarchy depended not on ceremony alone, but on clarity, compassion, and strategic unity. The document outlined a model wherein Catherine would assume an advisory role beyond ceremonial duties, one shaped by trust, not title. It was, without question, an endorsement, not as loud as Charles had claimed, not as dismissive as Anne had feared, but undeniable all the same. As whispers of the discovery reached the palace, a silent shift began to ripple through the senior ranks. Aides who had previously held firm to neutrality began to lean toward Charles and William's camp. Even those aligned with Anne could not deny the weight of a physical document, Elizabeth's words, in her hand, preserved intentionally. The implications for Anne were immediate and bruising. Her version of events, though heartfelt, now clashed with documented proof. And Camilla's position grew ever more fragile, her rage seemingly reduced to echoes of a conflict she could no longer influence. Rumours ignited another blaze. Had William known about this archive all along? Had he waited for the right moment to unveil it, allowing the fractures to grow until the timing ensured maximum impact? If so, it was a move not just of loyalty but of calculation, a prince stepping into the future with the quiet force of a king in waiting. The revelation from Balmoral didn't just change minds, it recalibrated loyalties, rewrote narratives, and cast Catherine in a new light, not as an opportunist, but as a woman entrusted with a legacy long before anyone else knew it existed. The battle had escalated from competing memories to competing truths, and now, with the Queen's handwritten words out in the open, the question was no longer whether Catherine should rise, but how high her ascent would go. As the document spreads among senior royals, it becomes clear this isn't just about one woman's wish. It's about redefining the monarchy. For decades, the royal family operated under a code of unity. But now, that code is shattered. Behind grand portraits and curtained rooms, alliances are forming and betrayal is blooming. The Queen's last wish has become a line in the sand. What began as a single sealed letter has erupted into a full-scale power fracture within the House of Windsor. The quiet tremors that once rippled beneath the surface now shake the palace's very foundation. Sides have been chosen. Charles, William, and Catherine have become an unspoken trio united not just by blood, but by a shared belief in Elizabeth's final directive. Their public appearances are carefully orchestrated, their unity unyielding as they push forward with a vision of a modernized monarchy. But standing in their shadow is a growing opposition: Camilla, Anne, and Edward. No formal announcement has been made, but the divide is as visible as a scar across the monarchy's face. Where once the family moved as one, they now walk parallel paths, occasionally intersecting, but never aligning. Camilla, wounded by exclusion and watching her role diminish, has found solace in Anne's fierce loyalty and Edward's quiet discontent. The three form a silent block, determined not to fade into ceremonial obscurity. Their meetings grow more frequent, their tone increasingly defiant. Meanwhile, Sophie, once a figure of quiet grace, now finds herself torn in the middle, caught between allegiance to Anne, her longtime confidant, and an emerging admiration for Catherine's strength. Her silence speaks volumes. She has become the monarchy's undecided vote, watched carefully by both factions, courted quietly, and expected to choose a side she cannot bring herself to declare. The inner machinery of the firm begins to bend under pressure. Invitations once sent to Camilla for protocol briefings are suddenly withheld. Strategic planning sessions now loop only in Charles's closest circle, and Catherine, once treated as a symbolic figure, now leads discussions with foreign diplomats and visiting dignitaries. It doesn't go unnoticed. Catherine's name appears on briefing memos typically reserved for reigning consorts. At a recent international summit, multiple state representatives addressed her with titles normally reserved for the Queen herself. It may not be official, but perception is power, and Catherine's is rising fast. The impact bleeds into the family's most sacred traditions. Christmas at Sandringham, once a symbol of unity, becomes a theatre of tension. No laughter echoes through the halls. The family photo, an annual image that reassures the public all is well, is conspicuously absent. For the first time in decades, no portrait is released. The message is deafening. The image of a cohesive monarchy has collapsed. The press feasts on the unravelling. Headlines scream of a fractured throne. The monarchy's Cold War dominates front pages, tabloids, and political commentary alike. Pundits argue whether the institution can survive a battle between two queens, one by title and one by destiny. But through the chaos, Catherine remains composed. She does not strike back. She does not posture. Instead, she retreats into the heart of Kensington Palace, where the public cannot see what she is crafting. Behind guarded doors, in the quietest room, she begins to write. Not a statement, not a rebuttal, but something far more dangerous. A letter, a vision, a line in ink that could either heal what's been torn apart or set fire to what's still standing. But in the quietest room of Kensington Palace, Catherine writes something that could either heal or destroy what's left. In the dead of night, an open letter is released under the palace seal. Not from Charles, not from William, but from Catherine herself. It is gracious, powerful, and piercing in its clarity, and it changes the game forever. No announcement preceded it, no briefing, no leak. The letter simply appeared, distributed through the official channels in the stillness before dawn. Yet within minutes, it had set the entire country alight. For weeks, Catherine had been silent, her growing influence whispered about but never confirmed. Now, she had broken that silence not with defiance, but with devastating grace. The letter opened with a tribute to Queen Elizabeth, acknowledging not only her reign but her quiet vision, her wisdom, and her final gift. Catherine spoke of her role with humility, framing it not as a rise to power, but as an inherited burden she would carry with both care and consciousness. She wrote not as a monarch in waiting, but as a servant of the monarchy's soul. But it wasn't just what Catherine said, it was what she didn't. She never once addressed Camilla by name, yet a single line rang like a bell through every chamber of the palace. No authority, she wrote, is inherited without service, and no crown is worn without cost. It was subtle, but unmistakable. A direct message cloaked in civility. To those watching closely, it was Catherine staking her claim not to power, but to purpose. And in doing so, she pulled the ground from beneath her rival's feet. The public responded with overwhelming support. Social media erupted with praise. Commentators across the political spectrum lauded her restraint, her resolve, and above all, her understanding of what the monarchy needed to survive, not more division, but a reminder of dignity. The letter was reprinted in full in every major newspaper by morning. Foreign outlets hailed her as the people's anchor, comparing her clarity to Elizabeth's earliest addresses during times of crisis. Diplomats who once viewed her as ornamental now began requesting direct audiences. Ambassadors sent personal notes of admiration. Inside the palace, a stunned silence settled over the opposing camp. Camilla, already reeling, reportedly refused to comment. Anne, though hardened, acknowledged the letter's brilliance in private. Even Edward was said to have paused, reflecting on whether they had underestimated her quiet force. For Charles, the moment was both pride and pain. His mother's wish had been fulfilled. But not by him. Catherine had moved the needle of history without permission, and the nation had embraced it. And yet, even as the winds turned decisively in Catherine's favour, something else stirred. Something not yet public. For while the world praised the princess for her eloquence and poise, Charles, alone in his study, flanked only by advisors, was weighing a final decision of his own, a decision that would either cement his mother's legacy or undo it with a single stroke. Because deep within the king's private chamber lay a document, unsigned, unprecedented, and potentially explosive. And once revealed, it would make everything Catherine had just written both irreversible and dangerously incomplete. But even as the public rallies around her, one final twist in Charles's private chamber threatens to upend everything she just wrote. At the edge of twilight, King Charles signs a document never before seen in royal history. It isn't just a statement of succession or authority, it's a declaration that rewrites the very nature of the monarchy, and it may be the last major act of his reign. The document bore no fanfare, no trumpeted reveal, no grand address from the balcony of Buckingham Palace. It was signed in near silence, with only a select few witnesses present, each of them aware that history was being altered before their eyes. King Charles, weighed down by months of emotional warfare and torn allegiances, had made his decision. The paper he signed formally established what had, until now, only existed in whispered speculation: the Queen's Advisory Council. Its leader, as decreed in unmistakable language, would be Catherine, not as a token figurehead, not as a silent consort, but as a sovereign advisor with active constitutional influence. From this moment forward, she would shape how the royal family was represented to the public, manage the allocation of royal engagements, and, most profoundly, act as the custodian of the crown's long-term legacy. Within palace walls, the response was seismic. Camilla, already frayed from months of watching her role fade into shadow, reportedly collapsed into tears upon hearing the news. Those closest to her said it wasn't anger, it was heartbreak. A life spent climbing toward acceptance now left her feeling like a placeholder in someone else's destiny. Anne, the fortress of tradition and silence, did not speak publicly. But her retreat from scheduled events, her sudden absence from several high-profile engagements, spoke louder than words. Her statement to royal aides was brief: "I need time for reflection." And just like that, the most dutiful royal of a generation stepped back from the front lines. But for others, the moment marked a turning point. William, unwavering in his support, stood quietly at his father's side, no longer just an heir but a partner in transition. Courtiers, long trained in the balance of power, began adjusting to the new hierarchy. Invitations were rewritten. Protocols were reviewed. Across the globe, monarchies and media houses alike began referring to Catherine not only as the Princess of Wales, but as the acting voice of continuity. And in Kensington Palace, a small but profound Ange sealed the symbolic transformation. Queen Elizabeth's portrait, once housed in a gallery among dozens of royal ancestors, was lifted and placed in a private office, Catherine's office. It now hangs above her desk, where she writes, meets and steers the monarchy forward, echoing the quiet authority of the woman who once wore the crown. This wasn't just a correction of legacy, it was the birth of a new chapter. Charles, in his final major act, didn't just honor his mother's whispered wish. He validated a vision, one rooted in dignity, in evolution, and in a woman the late Queen saw as her spiritual successor. And whether the rest of the family liked it or not, the future had chosen its voice. A wish whispered on a deathbed has become a revolution in plain sight, and the House of Windsor will never be the same again. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.